So when I was in my early 20s, and really kind of just starting this journey with the Lord, he told me not to work for money. It wasn't that I wasn't supposed to work, I just wasn't supposed to do anything specifically for money. Now, considering that I had just gotten married, literally like we had been married for less than a week when the Lord brought this to me, it was kind of obviously a terrifying word to receive. The company that I had just started with my business partner, we'd had a falling out, so I had abruptly exited the company and was in the process of preparing to start looking for work, and that's when I felt like the Lord said, hey, no, I want you to wait. And so I waited, and then came time to pay the rent, and the money wasn't there, and so it was kind of like, all right, Lord, like, you told me to wait, and we're here, what do you want me to do? And he just kept telling me to wait. And then my wife's mom showed up and gave us a check and told us to pay the rent and get our affairs in order. And my wife and I prayed on it, and we felt like the Lord said to not take the check and to continue waiting. So we gave the check back, and not long after that, we got a call from some friends of ours that said that they had prayed and they felt like the Lord said we were supposed to come and stay with them, and they weren't going to charge us any rent or anything, just, come and stay. So they showed up, they took our stuff to their place, and my wife and I packed ourselves into a single bedroom of our friend's apartment as we were kind of continuing on this crazy journey of following the Lord. And bear in mind, like, during this time, there was all kinds of things happening from a ministry perspective. Like, the Lord was, just divine encounters everywhere I turned. It felt like we were going somewhere, and there was a lot of things happening kind of in the natural to affirm that call or that direction. And so that went for about 6 months, and then I felt like the Lord said it was time to go stay with my parents. And at that point in time, my parents had accused me of spiritualizing irresponsibility and said that, God doesn't call people to do things like that, and just had a lot of problems with what I was doing. And just to be clear, I was actually working. I was working in my friend's shop, the one that I was staying with, but I was working for free. I just wasn't taking any money. So around the time that he told me it was time to go stay with my parents, he told me that it was okay for me to start looking for work again. And so called my parents. Obviously, their first question is, are you going to start working? I told them yes, felt clearance from the Lord to do that. And so my wife and I moved in with my parents. Now, during the time that I was with my parents, my wife developed an amazing relationship with my mom. They had coffee every morning. It was truly profound. And during my stay there, the Lord told me that around the end of the year, I think we had been there, I think we'd been there for about a month or two when this happened, maybe 3. The Lord told me that we needed to go to Kansas City to join an inner city ministry. Now, bear in mind, we had no money. My car was in my parents' name, and I wasn't allowed to take the car anywhere except for work because they were liable for it and didn't want me to take it anywhere until I was able to support the payments again. And so when I told them that the Lord was saying we needed to go to Kansas City, they were like, that's insane. You have no money. You're just now getting back on your feet. You don't even have your car caught back up yet. Like, how are you going to go to Kansas City? What in the world? But the Lord gave me a specific date, and I knew unequivocally that was what we were supposed to be doing. Now, part of what made this situation really interesting was that when I took the job that I took, because I had just gotten hired at Radio Shack, the district manager was concerned about hiring me because my background was far beyond what the position that I was taking. So he was concerned that I was just going to use it as a stepping stone, and he was trying to build his region because he had just gotten hired to our region, and he wanted to build up his region, and so he didn't want to bring a manager in that was only going to be there for like a few months and then be out. And so lo and behold, I'm like less than 4 months in to this region, and the Lord's now telling me I need to leave Texas and go to Kansas City, which obviously would mean I would have to leave that job. So we were visiting the ministry in Kansas City, and I prayed and I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I made a commitment to this guy that I'd be there for a year to calm his nerves, and like if I made that commitment incorrectly, I get it, and I'm okay with with that. That's on me, right? Like that doesn't make you look bad. That makes me look bad. But I was like, if there's any way that you could allow me to uphold this commitment, or get me out of it one way or another, that would be great, because I want to be honoring to this person because he gave me a shot, and I want to be honoring to the commitment. Less than 30 minutes later, I got a text message that there was an emergency call for all of the managers. So we get on the emergency call, and the regional manager tells us that Craig, who was the district manager that hired me, was leaving our district to go to a new district, and there was a new Craig that would be replacing him. Now, to contextualize how crazy that is, the Craig that took the district over that I worked for had only been there for like 5 months. Like, he had just taken the district over, and then they decided to move him like right at the moment that I'm praying about this. And so new Craig was installed by the time I got home that weekend. And so then I prayed, and I was like, okay, Lord, I've got a new boss now, which is interesting. I still need to go to Kansas City, and I wanted to see if I could get a transfer. The problem was the date that the Lord had given me was around the end of November, which meant that I would be making a transfer right in the middle of Christmas season, which, if you've ever worked in retail, you can't get a transfer in Christmas season. You really can't get a transfer in as a manager of a retail outlet during the holidays. Like, that's unheard of. But I asked the new district manager when I got back, and the Lord gave me just crazy favor with this guy. And he basically, the guy told me, he said, look, if you'll help me transition this store when the time comes, he said, I'll make sure you get your transfer. And so that's what I did. I worked with him. I helped him transfer transition the store, get everything where it needed to be. And then when it came time for the transfer, he called up the district manager over the place in Kansas City, and it just so happened that he wanted to replace one of his managers, and he liked me, and so I got my transfer. Oh, and of course, financially, we were in no position to move because, like, we had nothing, and the car situation, just everything, like, we were in no position to move. So one day when we got back from visiting Kansas City, this was probably about 2-3 weeks before it was time for us to go, at least per the date that the Lord had given me anyway. We got a call from my wife's grandmother. She had basically operated as almost like a bedside nurse to her grandfather when he had cancer, and stayed with him for about 3 months, and basically like nursed him back to health almost. She wasn't like a certified nurse or anything, but she was there and acted as his caretaker for about 3-4 months. Now, this had been probably, 8 or 9 years prior to the time that we were preparing to move to Kansas City. So her grandmother calls us up and says, hey, your grandfather's, near the end of life, and, I'm working through his will, and I feel like he should have paid you for that time that you spent taking care of him. So I'm sending you a check for $10,000. It'll be there in a couple days. And so all within a span of about 2 to 3 weeks, we got the check to move, we got the transfer, and the confirmation and everything that was required. And so before we left, we stood in my driveway talking to my parents, and they told me, we are struggling with what you're doing because it goes against everything that we've understood as far as like the way God works and what he tells people to do. But at the same time, it is so clear that God is with you that we just can't argue it. And so you have our blessing, go. And a part of the story that I forgot to mention was that the thing that started all this was I felt like the Lord told me when my wife and I got married that we should go and live with my parents for a year before we actually move into our own place, so that we can, get on our feet, get stable, everything else. And it was like one of those words that I was like, I've got to be imagining this. It can't, like, there's no way my wife is going to be about this. Like, there's no way that's like I'm hearing things. So I actually was afraid to act on what I thought I was hearing at first, and it took me another couple of tries to actually get to the place where I had the courage, I guess, to do what I felt like the Lord was telling me to do. Now, to really bring this story home, the risk was to follow what I felt like the Lord was telling me to do, which was to move in with my parents. That was the beginning of this. Now let me share with you the outcome. A month after standing in the driveway and leaving my home with my parents' blessing, my parents were killed in a car accident on Christmas Eve. That act of obedience allowed both my wife to develop a deep relationship with my mom that she never would have had had we not lived there. Like, that relationship would have taken years to form, and she formed in a span of a year what would have taken years under any other circumstances to form. Also, because of the circumstances, my parents were able to observe the faithfulness of God in a very direct and profound way through what he was doing in my life. And again, had I not been there with them in that situation, they would not have been able to see it and experience it in the same way. And lastly, I got something that very few people ever get, which was to leave home with their parents' blessing. And because of the timing of it, no new relationship had formed. I left home as a child, or really I should say I left home as an adult with my parents' blessing, and we didn't begin the process of developing the second relationship, which is the relationship of an adult and, the parent-adult relationship. And so their passing, while it was obviously tremendously difficult, it was not as damaging or disruptive to my life as it probably would have been had we had another decade of relationship where their exit was like cutting something off that was highly integrated in my life. Instead, our relationship came to a natural transition point, which was, I had been a child, I am now an adult, they recognized me as an adult, they blessed me, I left, and then they went home. I share all of that because you asked me about risk, but I wanted to make sure that you got to see the reward on the other side. So that's just one of a multitude of things that the Lord has asked me to do over the last 20 years that appeared tremendously risky, and yeah, I could tell you so many stories, but I think that's probably the most interesting in this journey.